So, boy, Judge Chutkan, while she's supposed to have been on break, in the pendency of the Supreme Court's decision 30 days after, was writing decisions and getting ready to resume with a fervor against Donald Trump. What did you make of her decision over the weekend, refusing to dismiss it for, what was the term? Malicious prosecution?
Yeah, I mean, we sort of expected that this case would be put on a fast track again once it came back from the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court decision was just an outstanding one by Justice Roberts, and it was really brilliantly written. I know that President Biden has criticized it and has been trying to politicize this issue and really attack the Supreme Court unfairly. But we think this opinion was sound, certainly supported by the Constitution, and most importantly, it protects the presidency in times of great challenges and enormous issues, both domestically and internationally. So it was a great decision. We also had previously moved to dismiss on the grounds of selective prosecution because objecting to an election is something that Democrats have done for years, and it's never been prosecuted. We wanted to preserve that issue. As you mentioned, the judge did not agree with our position. But again, that's something that ultimately could be decided going up on appeal. But right now, we're focused on executive immunity. That's the main issue that the court has to deal with. And as you mentioned, we'll be back in front of the judge on August 16th.
So the problem that Jack Smith, the prosecutor, he has a couple problems. Number one, he's got the immunity decision, and that may greatly affect the J6 case, which, was decided in the Florida case that Trump was immune. But it may affect the J6 case too. It's also a federal case, same prosecutor. So it's very possible Trump will be immune in the J6 case too for a large portion of the acts he's accused of. Secondly, Jack Smith is the same federal prosecutor in both cases, and he was DQ'd down there because she said you didn't have proper authority to bring this case. You're not a constitutional officer with the the blessing of anyone in the U.S. Senate or the president specifically. So what's going to happen next? Because I think most Trump fans were hoping the J6 case would go away for one or both of those reasons, but it hasn't.
There's a number of issues that the court will have to decide. The first one, which you've identified, is whether or not Jack Smith is a legitimate prosecutor and whether or not his appointment is in accordance with the Constitution. Justice Thomas recently wrote a concurring opinion in the U.S. v. Trump case where he said that Jack Smith is not a legitimate prosecutor because he was not confirmed by the Senate. He didn't go through that vetting process. And moreover, his appointment violates the Appropriations Clause, since he can spend a lot of money without any congressional approval. So that issue is also going to be important in the Washington, D.C. case. There's an appellate decision that's against us in Washington. On the other hand, there's no such opinion like that in Florida. So we may have a situation where we have two competing courts making different decisions on whether or not the prosecutor is legitimate, believe it or not. And in that situation, ultimately, it may be up to the Supreme Court to determine whether or not we even have a legitimate prosecutor, one who's able to prosecute a case.
But now what about immunity? Because the court found that a president has immunity for a whole host of acts, his core constitutional duties and some of his official acts. And now the dirty work of figuring out what he's accused of in this J6 case begins. The legal team admitted at argument some of the things he's accused of are not official acts. They gave a few of those away. And I know Andy McCarthy's been saying all along, why wouldn't Jack Smith just re-indict the case with just those few items? Because you and I both know he's desperate to get a trial, if not before November, then at least before January. So why wouldn't he just do that?
I can't speak for Jack Smith, but I think if he did that, there would still be issues relating to executive immunity that would have to be developed and decided by Judge Chutkan, who I believe will follow what the Supreme Court has indicated. So the chances of a trial before November are non-existent. That's just not going to happen. If Jack Smith decides to get a new indictment, that's something we'd have to deal with. But the bottom line is that the most important issue right now is the parameters of executive immunity. The reality is that a lot of government officials, judges, prosecutors, police officers have degrees of immunity. That's nothing new in the law. What the Supreme Court said is, based on our Constitution, we have to give similar protection to a president. So a president is not restricted in some way from acting appropriately in exercising his executive function. And the Supreme Court, I think, struck a brilliant balance on how to do that. So as you say, Megyn, some issues are absolutely immune. For example, when the president is faithfully executing the laws, when he or she is engaging in some kind of foreign activity, all of that is immune. There's other areas that might be presumptively immune when a president makes policy statements or is using the bully pulpit. And then there's areas that are completely not immune, which are personal acts. President Clinton lying during deposition, in a civil deposition, that's personal. So all of those things have to be sorted out. But as you say, it's going to be a massive undertaking over the next several weeks or several months, candidly.
So what is likely to happen? Because we've been watching and wondering all along, because Jack Smith seems so determined, and frankly, so does Tanya Chutkan, the judge, to get some sort of verdict against Trump ASAP. What's likely to happen next? Is there a realistic chance that they could get something tried, either a slimmed down, re-indicted case, or they're talking now about like a mini trial where they would just be parading terrible witnesses for Trump in front of the judge for the next few weeks, just to remind people January 6th was bad, just in case you didn't know it was bad. It was super, super bad, and Donald Trump is bad too. What are the odds of either one of those things taking place before November, and then let's do the expanded before January? Because I know there's been speculation that he won't stop. If Trump wins, that won't stop him. He'll continue trying to get a guilty verdict before he's sworn in.
That's a lot to address, but you've hit all the important points because, number one, there are Democratic operatives out there. Many of them are former federal prosecutors like I am, who are making really, I think, outrageous statements and unfair statements suggesting that there should be a mini trial to try to embarrass President Trump in some way and use it as an October surprise in the election cycle, which I think would be totally inappropriate and adverse to every principle of the Department of Justice policy. And then there are other Democratic operatives, including, a Congressman Raskin, who's saying he wants to take this all the way to January 6, 2025. And when President Trump wins the election, he wants to challenge that election in Congress. So we're dealing with political operatives that very much want to use the court system to their advantage. I believe that our judge will follow the mandate of the Supreme Court, which was very clear. The court was very clear that these issues have to be dealt with deliberatively, carefully, and transparently. And there's no rush to judgment here. So there's a lot of issues that need to be decided, a lot of issues as to whether or not an act is an official act or an unofficial act, but it's got to be handled within the four corners of the Supreme Court's decision and not based on any political agenda. What is striking here is that traditionally, the Department of Justice has not taken any action during a campaign season that might influence an election. So I'll be interested to see what the department's position is, or I should say the special counsel's position is with respect to whether or not they want to litigate during a campaign season. But candidly, that's the reason why a special counsel should be vetted in the Senate and subject to Senate confirmation. So senators can ask these types of questions. Are you going to use your power for some kind of political process? Are you going to use it in accordance with the Department of Justice guidelines, or are you going to do something different? None of that was.
I think I know the answer to this. I think the answer is it's, pedal to the metal to get Trump. That's obviously been their goal all along. But can I ask you, because Judge Chutkan has been going along with it. She seems very excited and gung-ho to keep going as fast as possible. She even said she would cancel her European vacation if necessary to try the case. But she's just gotten her hand slapped by her big bosses, not just the ones right above her, but the ones who have the ultimate say on all matters legal, those 9 justices, or at least 6 of them, which is a majority, who said this cannot be rushed through. They basically said what you just said, that this must be a deliberative process. And it wasn't. Like she didn't do it. So now, do you think realistically she could fast roll it through to some version of a trial between now and January?
Well, you're never going to get me to criticize the judge I'm appearing before, so I'm not going to do that. But what I will say...
Just talk to me about her possibilities. Like, objectively, what could she do?
What I will say, first of all, I think she's going to scrupulously follow the Supreme Court decision. And what the Supreme Court said is that we need a full record before we can make this call. This is the first time in our nation's history that there's been a prosecution like this. So we're in uncharted waters. But the Supreme Court said very clearly, we want to do this deliberatively. What we need is a full and complete record that we can look at to make these decisions. So undoubtedly, this case is going to be back before the Supreme Court at some point with a full record. The difference is that when you had the J6 committee, no one cross-examined any of the witnesses. It was political theater.
What do you mean? Adam Kinzinger was there. Liz Cheney was there, John.
Well, they didn't have me there, Megyn. They didn't have me cross-examining. So it's going to be a different environment. But the one thing that I'm struck by in litigating this case for a year is everything that Jack Smith wants and Jack Smith gets turns out to be beneficial to President Trump running for president. So we'll see what he asks for next. I don't know what that's going to be, but if it's a hearing, we'll certainly be prepared for it. But suffice it to say that this time around, there will be thorough and complete cross-examination, even if it gets to that point.
If you're tired of the same old coffee from those mega corporations pushing their woke agendas, listen up. It's time to take a stand and support a brand that embodies American values. At Blackout Coffee, they stand with hardworking Americans who believe in family, faith, and freedom. They roast some of the most incredible coffee you will ever taste using only premium grade beans. And guess what? They roast and ship within 48 hours to ensure you get the freshest coffee possible. I love this because I'm not into grinding my own beans. That's a pain in the butt. It adds another step to the process, and I'm already tired. So to know that I'm getting the freshest coffee, it was ground within 48 hours of me drinking it, that's big. You could start your day with a bold cup of Blackout coffee. Plus, it's not just coffee. It's a statement. Why settle for less? Make the switch to Blackout Coffee today by heading on over to the blackoutcoffee.com/MK site, or just use the code MK for 20% off your first order. blackoutcoffee.com/MK, and the code is MK. Join the movement. Taste the difference. Remember, with every sip, you are supporting a brand that stands for America. Be awake, not woke. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.